there are 3 secrets to eliminating employee entitlement in any context. And so I'm going to walk you through these 3 secrets. Secret number 1, which is the truth that we uncovered about why leaders are not dealing with employee entitlement, because that's a fact. Secret number 2, after helping thousands of leaders, the real reason why you've tried to fix your employees' attitude and behavior and you have failed, because that's an important thing to understand, is what is it that we're doing in this. And secret number 3, why it is that our revolutionary system, our framework for leading, works even when you're working with the most entitled employee. Because that's the important thing at the end of the day, is you want to have that proven framework, that step-by-step approach that guarantees that you are going to have success leading the performance, aligning the behavior of your entitled employees. So let's get started with secret number 1, the truth we uncovered about why leaders are not dealing with employee entitlement. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of a case study. We've hid the names to protect the innocent here. So leader, I've talked to Pierre 4 times about talking so loudly that he disrupts his colleagues. This is our coaching client in a session with us, talking to us about what's going on in his environment. I've had these conversations over and over and over again. If I've told them once, I've told them 100 times, you know those sorts of expressions that get used. The first time that Pierre was spoken to, he said to his leader, well, I was brought up in an Italian family. What am I going to do? Everyone's loud. It's just the way we are. End of the conversation. The next time it was raised, come to dinner at my house, says Pierre. You'll see how loud and boisterous, and I just can't help it. It's just the way I am. The next time the leader goes, well, why don't you just buy noise canceling headphones for whoever's complaining about it? And finally, stop trying to change me. So does this sound familiar? Where you go, you have the conversation, you expect a different outcome. By bringing it up with the employee, you expect to see them change their behavior, but what you do is you get instead is the resistance and that emotional reasoning or the emotional responses from your entitled employees. So one of the things that we find that most leaders believe that entitled employees don't want or need to be led. But that's not the reality. And in fact, it's essentially burying your head in the sand. It's basically like saying, as a leader, I'm abdicating my authority. You as the employee, you have all the authority that you want. You get to behave how you want. You get to do what you want. You get to do it the way you want to do it. And I'm just going to stay here frustrated and powerless to do anything about it. You go back to the leader talking about Pierre. I've talked to him 4 times. Well, talking to somebody isn't the same as leading them. And that's the one thing that we have found, is that as leaders have bought into this idea about millennials and entitled employees, they have fundamentally stopped leading. The behavior instead has shifted to asking, maybe sometimes even begging. Would you please, would you mind, could you do this for me? You know, moving this again into that place where we're basically sending the message to our employees, you have the power to decide, and I'm just here hoping that we can move this along and that I can get what I need done, right? So here's another example. And I love this one because this has actually gone on in our client for a couple of years before we started working with them. The leader says to the employee, now let me give you a little bit of backstory here. This employee wants a promotion. In fact, they believe that they're long past being entitled to a promotion and that the organization really is getting in their way, and his boss in particular saying, well, you need to get promoted, you need to get out of the way so I can get promoted. The reality is this leader has had multiple conversations with the employee about their performance and about certain aspects of the job and what's expected of them. So the leader again reiterates the message, you have to be out in the field at least 3 times a week if you want to be successful in your role and get promoted. For the organization, that is a core requirement of performing this role and certainly being able to move up to the next level. The employee's response is, I can do my job from the office. And really, even though I know I'm supposed to be out there networking and building relationships because that is going to better serve the organization, I can't do breakfast or dinner meetings because I really need to get home. So I'm just going to do my job the way I want to do my job, but you still need to promote me for doing it that way. The interesting thing is that in this situation, the leaders themselves, even though they have this conversation, there's no consequence for this employee at all for choosing not to be out in the field. In fact, this individual has a very lucrative car allowance. that they don't use because they're never out in the field. But when the suggestion is that they take it away from the employee, of course, they don't want to do that because, no, we have to be careful about what it is we do with our employees. So you see the dynamic that's gone in here is the leader is saying what it is they want, what they expect to see, and the employee simply countering it. And then that's the end of the conversation because there's nothing, it's like, okay, he said, and then what are we going to do about it? And the answer is we stay stuck in that place. So what you might be thinking at this point in time, that it's not possible, that entitlement is not something that can be eliminated, that people just are the way they are. And there's nothing we can do as leaders to eliminate entitlement other than to make sure that we don't hire employees who feel entitled. But that's not the reality. And again, you might also think, and if you're one of those, and certainly we have a lot of clients that we work with that subscribe to this idea that people cannot change their behavior and employees just are who they are. And so we have to accept them kind of lock, stock, and barrel, as they say. We have to accept them in that whole state that they bring to us. Again, we are powerless to do anything about it. But I want to challenge you to think about something and to think about this whole idea about whether or not we as human beings can change our behavior. Because, of course, the science debunks that myth because the science makes it very clear that we do have the ability, and in fact, our brains are intended to develop and evolve and to allow us to shift our behavior over time. So I always use the analogy of, think about how you are at home when you're on your own and how you are at work. Are there differences in how you behave? Of course there are. What about differences between how you behave on your own or at home or even at work relative to how you behave with your in-laws? Bet you agreed with me there too. The fact is we can adapt our behavior. We can adapt our behavior to conform, to fit, to excel in a particular situation. And so we can change our behavior. The challenge is that it's not as easy as snapping your fingers or just saying, here, change your behavior, and then somebody's going to do it. Employees, yes, they are who they are. They come to us in a particular way, but that doesn't mean we can't meet them where they're at and support them to shift their performance and to shift their behavior in order to meet our needs and the needs of the organization. The other thing you might be thinking is that, well, the employees are just going to get upset if I try and deal with their entitlement. I hear this all the time. Oh, we have to be careful what we say to them. We don't want to upset them. And, we have to watch it because we can't have that conversation because they're just going to get upset. But you see how that creates, again, the power in the employees, because if our agenda as leaders is just to keep our staff from being upset, then we're always going to be working around them and they're always going to have more power and authority than we do. And so again, that's not leading, right? That is adapting to whatever our employees are bringing to us and trying to figure out a way to make it work. So even though you may be thinking these things, we have to go on to look at what it sets us up for, which is fundamentally to blame the employees for their entitlement, that it's their fault, and it's their fault that we feel powerless. It's their fault because they're so emotional, they're so entitled, they're so resistant, they're so whatever. But here's the truth about blame. We all do it. Our first reaction is to blame. I mean, that's the reality. We want to kind of push off the responsibility from ourselves and put it on somebody else. But the thing is that blaming others actually leaves us powerless. It really does give the employee all of the control in this situation. And we really render ourselves as leaders completely helpless when we are placing the blame on the employees or on the entitlement of the employees. So it's kind of like willingly taking all of your power and authority as a leader and saying, here you go, employee, have it, it's all yours, do with it what you will. But the moment that we decide to take our power back, the moment that we decide to stop blaming the employees and instead take the power back to us, we create all kinds of opportunities and all kinds of options for us to look at it differently and to solve it differently. So we say it's time to take your power back. So if we really want to eliminate entitlement, we have to take our power back. And authority is not a dirty word, despite the fact that it seems like that's the way it's gone in organizations today. The reality is authority and exercising your authority, establishing it, maintaining it, using it productively to get the performance and behavior that you need, that is what leading is all about. As a leader, only you have the responsibility to fix this. Employees are not responsible for fixing this because, again, we put ourselves in that position, or we put our employees in the position of actually increasing and fueling their employee entitlement, because every time we tolerate it, every time we give into it and let them have their way, kind of like, you know, we talk about this with children all the time, is, you know, just because a child has a temper tantrum, it doesn't mean you give them what they want. Just because an employee's entitlement is acting from that entitlement, it doesn't mean we as a leader give them what they want. That's not in their best interest, and it's definitely not in the best interest of the organization every time they do that. But here's something that's important to understand. You have the power. As a leader, you have the power to do this. It is a skill. It's a skill. That's all it is. It is a skill, and it is something that can be learned. But the reality is most of us have never had the opportunity to develop these skills, to master them, to really learn what we need to learn as leaders in order to navigate the complexities of human behavior and human emotions. But you have the power to do this, and because it is simply a skill set and a set of tools. So secret number one, now you know that anything that is rooted in judgment or blame of your employees is actually keeping you stuck as a leader and getting in your way of transforming employee performance and behavior. Anytime you are putting the blame on them or pointing the fingers at them, you are actually fostering employee entitlement as opposed to addressing it.